This episode of the Hunt Stealth podcast is brought to you by ReadyWise Outdoor. When you're chasing adventure, you need energy you can count on. ReadyWise Pro Meals are packed with over 30 grams of protein and 500 plus calories per serving to keep you energized no matter the terrain. From the protein-packed breakfast skillet to the Thai coconut cashew curry, these lightweight, freeze-dried meals are ready in minutes. Made in the USA, ReadyWise is built for hunters and explorers just like you. Visit ReadyWiseOutdoor.com and use promo code RYAN20 to save 20% off your next order.
You're listening to the Hunt Stealth Podcast with Ryan Uffens, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild. Whether you're an aspiring hunter or an adventurer seeking the untamed, together we'll explore the strategies and stories that lead to success in the great outdoors.
Today we have Michael Maroney joining us on the show. Michael, thanks for being here, man. Excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Hey, I want to share a little bit about you. You are co-founder of Infinite Outdoors.
I can't go that far. I've been with the company for 3 years now, run all the marketing, but not one of the founders. Helped push it along, but it wasn't my idea to begin with. So
you're the marketing arm is the man that makes everything come to fruition. Until you get a good marketing guy, it's all just an idea. But why don't you just share real quickly, and I want to dig into this a little bit later, but just share a little bit about your background and like hunting. You're growing up. I know we were talking a little earlier. You had kind of started growing up doing a lot of bird hunting, and then what that transitioned into, and then kind of what led you to Infinite Outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of started at a very young age, going out to eastern Colorado and northwest Kansas, doing some pheasant hunting. So my dad was big into it and his buddies, so we would go with them every year, a few times a year. Started on that since I can remember. Was out there chasing pheasants, and then kind of from there grew into, started deer hunting. The property that we hunt, we, started realizing there's a bunch of deer out there and kind of got into that a little bit more from there. I was
that on private land?
It was, yeah. Yep. So was fortunate enough to hunt private land out there. Northwest Kansas and eastern Colorado, there's not a ton of public land. There's a little bit, some state walk-in areas and things like that, or state wildlife areas and walk-in areas. But for the most part, it was all on private land. And then kind of from there, actually, after college, moved up to Steamboat, Colorado, so northwest corner of the state, and was a fishing guide for about 10 years up there. And then for about 8 of those years, I was also an elk and deer hunting guide. So kind of at an early age, got into big game hunting. I was always a fly fisherman, so that kind of was a natural shift to becoming a guide. And then, as I got more experience in that, and then in the big game side of things, I became a big game guide for about 9 years in Colorado and in New Mexico, and then transitioned out of that a little bit and did some biology work. So I did some fisheries biology stuff for several years and habitat enhancement in the fisheries world. And that kind of fizzled out after a few years and found the guys at Infinite, and they were just getting started, and kind of took on the role of marketing director and CMO of the company. So kind of been a weird way to get there, but hunting and fishing has always been part of my life, from a young age. So it's nice to be back in the industry kind of full time and getting to do what I love. So
that's exciting. Yeah, the hunting industry is a ton of fun. Not an easy one to crack into for sure, but it helps. You get guys like you, and you got guys like me who don't know anything about hunting that are just trying to figure it out and get my feet underneath me. But it's fun to sit down and be able to chat with guys like yourself who have that experience and that knowledge, and that, runs like the full gambit. That's the one thing that I've discovered is I've always loved the outdoors, but the guys that grew up like in the outdoors, they do it all, like the bird hunting, the fishing, the big game. and they find their ways into being guides. You get good at what you do, and then you start taking people out, helping them have success, and then just keep following your passion, and doors open.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a lot of kind of like dedication in a weird way to your passion of, being outdoors or whatever that is, of like, I'm going to go fishing every day. Like before I became a guide, that's what I did. I fished every day. I went to the fly shop every day to buy new stuff or check in with those guys. And then next thing you know, they're offering you a job to say, hey, do you want to come like shadow a couple guide trips and see if it's something you want to do? And then you're there for 10 years doing it, kind of thing. And then, from the hunting perspective, you're, doing the same thing. It was a hunting shop and fly fishing shop that I would go to. And then, one thing turned to another. And then you get a call from a buddy of a buddy in New Mexico looking for a guide. And then you're down there for your, all your falls. And then after that for a few years. So, it is kind of takes some weird, dumb luck and then a lot of dedication. But, same thing with like how I joined Infinite. I was, like finishing one job and ran into those guys at an expo, and they were just kind of getting the wheels rolling on this idea that they had and needed some help from the marketing side. So, it just kind of started and as hey, let me help them out for a few months. And now I've been here for 3 years kind of thing. So
that's awesome.
It's interesting.
I'm excited to talk a little bit more about Infinite Outdoors. But we'll save that for a little bit later. Tell me, as you kind of transition from doing like the bird hunting into the big game hunting, like what were some of the challenges that you discovered that maybe folks that are new to it could shorten that learning curve?
Yeah. Well, I always went with like, I can remember the first couple of years. So we were mule deer hunting out in the, eastern plains of Colorado, and then, and areas that we had always pheasant hunted. And so I knew the topography really well. And I kind of knew, from walking it, pheasant hunting, there's no trees out there. So you're basically just hunting these small changes in topography, these little depth, like little dry creek beds and mixed in with ag fields and stuff like that. So having people there to kind of help show me, I'd always seen deer in these certain areas. Like when you're pheasant hunting, you jump a deer here or there, but learning where they move at different times of the year, and especially during those rifle seasons as pressure increases. So that was a big thing, is like kind of trying to figure out, all right, what are these, we always see these deer running away when we're out here pheasant hunting because they were bedded down in a certain area. And then, as we're out there pheasant hunting, they run to this area or that area. So kind of learning where their safe zones are or where they would like to go during pressure, because, where I was hunting in a lot of areas, the seasons are pretty short. So usually the first 2-3 days of a season the deer are doing what they normally would. They're in the same areas that they are all throughout the year, or in those fall areas when they're going into the rut or post rut, things like that. But then as pressure comes out and there's more trucks driving around or more people walking around, even if you're on private, like those other private landowners are probably hunting, or people that have access to that. So it's kind of trying to figure out where deer go from when they're comfortable to when they have a ton of pressure on them. That was a big thing to learn, and setting up in those areas and maybe looking at what everyone else is doing. So a lot of people in those plains units will drive, they're driving around their truck glassing, trying to find deer, not always walking as much or setting up and waiting kind of thing. So I kind of learned that, you have a lot better, it gets kind of boring. It's similar to like tree stand hunting. You might, if you sit in one spot that those deer are going to move through when they're pressured, you're going to get an opportunity. So that was a big thing of like learning the first couple of years, of just all right.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I think of, like I said, I'm new to hunting. Like I didn't grow up in a hunting family. I just barely finished my hunter safety.
Yeah.
I did like the 3-year program, and then I got my hunter safety done. But as I think of that, like that's one of the things that they really kind of drill into. And maybe somebody who did their hunter safety when they were a lot younger and never really hunted, like they talk a lot about like the habitat and like the animal behavior. And I think that that's something that you think about, but the biggest thing for me as someone who has ADHD is like that sitting put.
Yeah, it's hard.
and just being relaxed and but there is like that enjoyment and that peace that comes from being in the outdoors, especially if you get a little bit more remote to where you don't have a lot of pressure from other hunters. The animals can kind of fall back into a little bit normal groove. So no, I agree 100% with what you were sharing there.
And I think it's also, this is the example I'm using is like Eastern, the Eastern Plains of Colorado or, Western Kansas, where it's pretty remote, but there's still county roads every mile kind of thing. So in most spots, so you're still, unless you're in some big canyons or something, but it works the same, in my years of, guiding elk and things like that, you try to find the areas that those elk are going to be, whether they're pressured or unpressured. And then, think of all the factors that go along with that. Like, is there other people hunting it? That's a big one. What time of the rut is it? Is it pre-rut, post-rut, or during it? Where are they going to be? And then like weather factors or food sources, things like that. So we'll go, I kind of learned early that if it's cold out, those deer are going to probably be working corn or winter wheat, things like that in the plains, because they're looking for those food sources. And then they want somewhere that they can hide easily. So if there's a creek bottom or if it's windy, they're going to be out of the wind, whatever side of that wind is coming from. They're probably going to, if it's cold and windy, in December, they're going to be hiding out of the wind kind of thing. So, just kind of learning about their characteristics, whether you're, hunting deer or elk or whitetail, whatever it is. That's kind of, it all correlates in some way or another, but just like, I don't know. I've always been a big proponent of when you're hunting or fishing or just being outside, like just being super observant of everything. Like taking in if there's old tracks here or fresh tracks or different sign, it kind of brings you back to that old way of living too, which I think is cool, but it's kind of part of the whole hunting thing. And trying to observe everything you can, take it all in.
That's great advice. Hey, Michael, tell me, as you think back over your hunting experiences, is there one that you felt like that just stands out, that just you had like a great time, whether it was a successful, harvest or not, but just one that you just think back on with like fond memories of?
Yeah. There's one that I always like go back to, and it was the first mule deer I shot with a bow, which was kind of a crazy story. Again, in the Eastern Plains, and had set up. There was one tree in this CRP pasture, and I knew the deer had been. It's kind of a path that they move through, and especially during the rut, they kind of go from one food source to another, and set up next to that, and just kind of waited. It was one of those things where there's a lot of deer around, and we set up or I set up, waited forever, nothing going on, and it's kind of in a spot where you can't see a whole lot, so there's deer around, but you just can't see them. And all of a sudden, a few does start trickling over the hill to the south of me, and the wind is straight. It was kind of messed up. It was, well, the way that the deer came in, it was messed up. They were coming in and going to be downwind of me. So I thought I was kind of hosed. And I'd actually, have you heard of that nose jammer stuff?
Yes, I have.
So I had never used it before, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. Who knows? They're mule deer. They're not as necessarily sensitive to scent as maybe whitetail or elk is. So, man, I sprayed that stuff all over me, and you smell like it's like you smell like vanilla and whatnot. It's kind of a weird scent. And I was like, maybe I'll try this. If the wind is bad, or if they come in on the wrong side, it'd help. Covered myself in that and all my gear, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, all these does start walking by, and they just more or less stopped and started grazing like right within 20 yards of me, straight downwind. And first it's a couple does. They didn't seem to care at all that I was there, and it turned into like 20 does that were, or no, not 20, 12 does. I mean, that were straight within 20 yards of me, just right downwind, just feeding, nothing. And then all of a sudden, here comes this buck, and he crosses over into the CRP from where he was, and he's pushing a doe pretty hard. And he comes in and he kind of stopped outside at like 35 yards, and he so I'm covered up in deer. I have to draw my bow back somehow. I'm like, they're all going to see me. So I just kind of said, screw it, and just drew my bow back. All the does scattered, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at a doe. So he just kind of stood there. I let one rip at 35, shot, just grazed his back, basically, just shot right over his back. And being a mule deer, he did the classic mule deer thing and ran 10 yards and stopped and looked back like, what the heck was that? So as quick as I could, I reloaded, or like got another arrow in and sent one at 45. Yeah, I just kind of like, I guessed more or less, and looked like he'd run 10 yards. And I drilled him right through both, it was a little forward, so right through both shoulder blades. And I could see that, my arrow was sticking out 10 inches. So I knew I had good penetration. And he kind of started running, ran over a hill. And it was, maybe 15 minutes left in shooting light. So it was getting kind of dark. And so I kind of sat there for a minute. He ran over the hill. I'm like, oh, okay, I think I got him good. But it wasn't like a, clean pass through. I was shooting an iron will broadhead that, normally in a pretty heavy arrow. So normally if you hit them good, that thing zips right through them and they don't go very far at all. And I'd actually just switched to those broadheads. I'd shot one other elk with them, but yeah, so I waited till right about dark, and I'm like, all right, I got to go see if I can find this thing before it gets dark out, kind of thing. And go over the hill, and couldn't find him, couldn't find blood, couldn't find my arrow, couldn't find the nocturnal. And I kind of creep over the hill, and I see him walking slowly down the hill towards this maybe 20 acres of weeds that are 10 feet tall, and I'm like, if he goes in there, I don't know if I'll ever find him, like it's going to take a long time. Like, you can't see anything in there. It's hard to even walk through. And so I sat there up on the hill and waited, and kind of let it get dark. I thought I saw him bed down right there, and it was supposed to be, 15 degrees that night. It was pretty cold. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to back out of here. The meat will be fine. I don't want him to go into that thick stuff, because if he does, who knows if I'll find him. So that next morning, I went and sat out like kind of across from that field just to see if he was going to, if anything was coming out, just let the sun come up. And when the sun started coming up, it was like a party of coyotes on that over there by where I shot that deer. It was just, you could hear 5-10 different coyotes running around, yipping, yapping. And I was just like, oh no, like they found him, kind of thing, So I went over there, and I couldn't find the deer at first. I'm like, these got to be somewhere right here. This is where I saw him bed down. And then next thing you know, I see like a patch of fur here, some, other patch of fur there. I found a leg, and I got up to that deer, and the coyotes had drug him about 50 yards probably from where I think he died. And they ate the entire mule deer. And it was a big mule deer, like big bodied deer. They ate him all the way up to his neck, or to like his skull. Basically, they cleaned the bones,
just devoured him,
guts gone. I couldn't even find hardly any fur. I don't know where they drug that off to. And turns out that all the, like, there was trails. I walked around that little patch of weeds, and there's just trails in and out of there of where all the coyotes had been coming. So they were all living in there, and they had a free meal that just right next to them. So kind of a not ideal in terms of I didn't get any meat out of it. I got a cool story, and I got the head, but it kind of sucked, in terms of, we're trying to get meat. Yeah, the horns are fun, but you can't eat them. So yeah, so that was kind of interesting. Like, you always try to do the right thing and not push the animals, and not, if they're like, I knew it was a good enough shot to where he was going to die, but you don't want to bump them, and then you're chasing them down and they die somewhere you don't know. So you back out, and then, next thing you know, you don't have any meat left. But kind of an interesting story out there. One that I always think about when I walk past that spot. So
stinking coyotes, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So yeah. I've had some other good hunts, out there, and then, good deer hunts and good elk hunts that I've been on, and some that I've guided to. That a lot of good stories. Probably could talk for more than enough time about different hunting stories.
Well, I'm in no rush, man. I love this stuff. It's a way for me to constantly learn. Tell me, where was your favorite elk hunt that you did yourself? Like, is there a place that you're like, I love this area?
There's an area down kind of central Colorado that I went on an elk hunt with a buddy this last year, kind of down by like Fairplay area, and you're hunting above timberline during first rifle season. And a guy that I hunt archery with, he's older than me, and we've always hunted with him growing up. Kind of like he taught me a little bit about elk hunting growing up, and but it's always been archery season, and he had a whole bunch of points he cashed in, so I went with him. And my brother and I did actually, and it was a fun hunt. We weren't successful, but the amount of elk that we saw, because it's just different, like grinding it out in the timber when you're archery hunting, and you see elk here and there, but you see sign more than you see actual elk, and then you get above 11,000 feet, and you're just up there like, why would an elk live up here? And then you're glassing in the morning and you see different 4 different herds of 50 to 100 elk, and it's pretty fun. I'm typically a bow hunter when it comes to elk hunting, because I just like it a lot. But that first rifle season and getting above timberline is pretty fun. Just the amount of, the different elk that you see and different things that you see all the time up there is pretty cool.
Why do you think they like that elevation?
It's kind of weird. There's a lot of water up there. There's actually a decent amount of food. Like, it's kind of that middle ground between, like, they'll go down in the timber and bed, which is safe, like in the dark timber, and it's that spruce forest, like kind of high alpine spruce forest. And then right in that kind of transition zone between like full on rock, high alpine tundra, and then the forest, there's a ton of grass, and it doesn't get there's not a lot of grazing up there other than elk, and there's not like there's a bunch of cattle and stuff that go up that high. And
lack of pressure, probably.
Yeah. And there's no pressure.
Because they're such, like, I've only seen one up close, like in the wild, like that I've like a big bull.
Yeah.
And like, they're enormous.
Yeah. They're huge. Yeah.
Anybody walks into Cabela, you're going to see a nice big bull, but when you see them alive, like in their element, and the way they can like move through, it's like thick scrub oak timber. It takes me forever to navigate through that stuff, and they just crazy. Bounce through it like it's nothing to them.
Yeah. And we watched elk, we had this year, we were up at 11.5, I think, is like where the timber was. It was like right at timberline. Came across a bunch of cows and a small bull, and we ended up. They kind of saw us. We more or less bumped them. It wasn't the bull we were looking for, and I watched them run up a scree field up over 12,000 feet like it was nothing. And just like 4 or 5 cows and a calf, like just bumping just right over the top. And I was looking at the map, and I'm like, there's nothing over there. Like, there's like maybe a little goat trail that they could get down through these cliffs, and they just went up over the top like they'd done it a million times, and like it was nothing. And meanwhile, if I was trying to hike up where they did, it'd take me 30, 45 minutes at least to get up that, and they did it in about a minute and a half. So
yeah, it's wild, their ability to like move through any animal.
Yeah.
Too. It's like, I've talked to a couple of guys that have had, like bears come in on them, and it's just,
yeah,
it's Mother Nature, man.
It's crazy.
You better have your wits about you if you're out there, because, when my son and I were out elk hunting, like this fall, we decided to go up a little different area that we hadn't really gone. It was like thick scrub oak, and we're pushing up through it, and I about broke my leg. Like, yeah. I stepped down. Like, that's the other thing. Like, when it comes like the speed, like I started after that, like I stepped through like some deadfall, and like leg went down and slipped. I've got my pack on me and come forward, and my leg gets pinched, and like it could have been bad. Like, yeah. I felt like the pressure on it, and I'm like, did it break? Cause it was painful, but yeah. You can try and go fast, but then you're going to open yourself up to getting injured.
Absolutely.
And then your hunt's over.
Yeah. And that's what's crazy is like that where we hunt in Colorado normally is um, just been wrecked by beetle kill, and there's crisscross. It's just like toothpicks. You can walk further if you go slow. It's on top of logs than you can, actually quicker because you're not climbing over things, but you could walk for quarter mile without touching the ground just on top of logs. But those elk will come right through it, like it usually sounds like more than there actually are. Like I've had it
Sounds like a
where,
freight train. Like that's
yeah,
like when I first heard him coming up, I was like, what on earth is that? Because he was behind
yeah,
me.
yeah,
And it's just one bull, but it did. I mean, it's like you see the videos. I think of like the hunting Sasquatch or whatever it is, finding
yeah.
Bigfoot, and you hear the oh, they're out throwing trees around out there. That's kind of what it sounded like,
Oh yeah, it does.
and
And
it blew me away. They're such a majestic animal. Like
yeah,
part of me wishes I could tame one and use it as a horse.
yeah, they're incredible. And like what they can, how quickly they can move across a landscape, but then also and how loud they can be when they want to be loud, but then also how silent they can be. I was talking about that deadfall. Like I've had them where it sounds like a herd of elk and it's one bull or a bull and a cow coming across it. And then I've had other times where you'll get one sneak right up on you across deadfall and they didn't make a peep. They didn't break a stick when it's
Yeah.
little, and so they can do kind of in both ways, like be incredibly loud and dominant and kind of that kind of thing, and then they can be
Like a
super
bull in the
sneaky.
China store.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
they go full ninja mode.
yeah, and you're like, or yeah, especially when they, sometimes when they sneak away from you, like they're coming in, you see them, and then all of a sudden they're just like gone, and you're like, where did this 700
Massive
pound
animal go
animal
to.
go? So that's always fun, but.
Do you have you shifting gears a little bit? Have you hunted anything besides like mule deer, elk? Is there another big game that you've hunted, or is there one that you would like to hunt?
Yeah, I mean, I've hunted whitetail a decent amount. Most of that has just been tree stand hunting. Had some success there. I hunt turkeys every spring, but in terms of big game, like one of the bucket list items is going up to Alaska and doing a DIY moose hunt up there. Whether it's getting dropped off on a plane or floating a river and doing that. That and caribou are kind of two on my bucket list of things to do. I have a buddy close by. He actually does all my like Euro mounts, and he went up there a couple years ago, and he was just telling me how much it's not that expensive of a hunt. You got to pay for your flight in, and it's expensive to get everything back if you shoot one and things like that. But realistically, you can go shoot a big moose, for 10 grand, which really isn't that bad when you think you're going all the way to Alaska. Um, so that's one, like, and I'd like to do it, DIY style where you're just out there with a couple buddies in the elements, and they drop you off and say, call us, we'll pick you up in 5 days. Let us know if you need anything before here, kind of truly you're out there with the grizzlies and the wolves and, not that I'm a fan of either of those and when I'm out in the woods, but it's just kind of a cool experience, just being out there. I've been to Alaska once and it's a pretty amazing place. So like to do that. That's on the bucket list. Um, you know, I have a bunch of points for moose. I'll draw that in Colorado at some point, maybe. But those are kind of the big ones. I've been on a mountain goat hunt with a friend. That was really cool. Those things live in incredible places. When you're like, you see goats running across a
Sheer ledge.
yeah, yeah, like it just looks like a cliff face, and we climbed up there one time, and I'm like, if I fall, I'm dead, kind of thing. Like you look down, and you're like, if I trip at all, I'm gonna tumble 1,000 feet to the bottom, kind of thing. And they're just up there living, so that was cool. I also love pronghorn hunting. It's a really fun, like different target rich environment. You're out there in the open, seeing how close you can sneak into them, kind of thing. It's a great one to like. I always tell people that are like thinking about getting into hunting. They're like, hey, I want to, whether they want to get into hunting for the hunting side of things, or they, want to get into, you know, sourcing their own food and meat and things like that, I think pronghorn's a great way to start because it's usually target rich. If you're okay with shooting a doe, or you're not looking for, like, unless you're super experienced in the differences in, a 60-inch goat versus a 75, 80-inch goat, it's pretty hard to tell, like what the difference is. So like a trophy, most antelope look pretty good when you walk up to them, kind of thing, It's not like shooting a fork versus a 4-point, whitetail or mule deer. So I don't know. I love chasing antelope on the plains too. It's a lot of fun, and they taste great.
Yeah, that's what I say. I've heard from several people. They say like antelope's like really good.
Yeah, as long as you get it cleaned and like skinned quickly. Like if it's normally warmer out, like it's because it's usually like ends in middle of October. They have some late seasons, but um, if you shoot an antelope and you shoot it, it dies quick, and you can get it in a cooler in like an hour, like skinned and in a cooler, it'll be phenomenal. If you let it sit there and you're hanging out or whatever, it gets hot, much like most animals, but they're so thin skinned that meat can kind of get a little funky pretty quick. So you got to get on it pretty fast. So
yeah.
yeah.
Then make sure the coyotes don't get it overnight.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily out there you can see them all coming, but
that's yeah. No, I think that's a lot of fun. That is something I want to do. I never thought that I'd want to hunt antelope, but I mean, I've talked to several guys, and they just like you said, like it's a target rich environment, and it's hard to be like, oh, well, that's a trophy versus not. And the biggest thing that I'm doing it for is like I want it for the meat. Like I want to
yeah,
fill my fridge. It's like if I can get a doe or a cow or anything at this point, like I said, I'm 4 years into it, and I've yet to take down any big game animals, but I'm doing everything archery, and
yeah.
I'm like, what's the hardest way to hunt an animal? I'm like,
Yeah,
let's
start with
start with
that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
definitely a little, you're setting yourself up to make it more difficult. But I also appreciate that, because if you can do that, you can hunt them with a rifle pretty easily. And antelope are hard with a bow, but if you can get set up on a water hole, and it's hot out, so you're sitting there. You can also stalk them. They're pretty curious animals when they rut, so you can stalk them. I know guys will shoot them with just a white T-shirt on. They'll come running because they think you're another antelope, or they have the
there's a good
attachment to.
tip. If you're
Yeah,
out
it
hunting,
works
throw on a
pretty
white
good.
T-shirt.
Yeah, ditch the camo and just put on a white T-shirt. I'm telling you, like, have one at least underneath your camo. So if you can't sneak in on them, just try that, because it's worth trying. They're pretty curious. They're very skittish until they're not, and then they'll walk right up to you almost, and be ready to shoot 50 to 70 yards if you can, kind of thing, because they'll walk up, but they'll probably stop at about 50 yards. So
Like, wait a second. you
yeah,
don't you you don't look like what I thought you were.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Have you thought
but
about
yeah, they're
doing any
fun.
predator type hunts?
Yeah, I mean, you mean in terms of like
Black
mountain
bear,
lion or?
wolf, mountain lion, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a. I'm not opposed to any of it. I mean, I like it all. I've been on some mountain lion hunts. Been on some bear hunts. Personally, I've been around them, like been around bears a lot, and like in the fisheries world, you're just in their habitat all the time. Not like high on my priority list. I think it really depends. Like I'd probably black bear would be on the top of my list if I had to pick one of those three. I think if I was up in an environment like up in Canada or Alaska, the wolf would be pretty, it would be up there too. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm not like a diehard predator hunter. I mean, I like going to shoot coyotes and things like that, but it's not. I don't know. Spring bear would be pretty fun. Certain places like Wyoming, going to chase, or up in Idaho and Montana doing spring bear. So
Yeah. I was talking with Ty Eubanks. I did a
yeah,
podcast with him last night, and he's got an outfit up in Idaho, and he's got some. He does everything, but he's got some black bears. The area that he goes into, he sent me some photos like afterwards, and I'm going, piqued my curiosity. I never thought that I would want to go hunt a black bear, but after, talking about him and that, and he's got hounds and they run mountain lions and that too.
Yep.
But yeah, like spring bear up there would be, and like that Nez Pierce, like that's like Forrest is where he's at. Like he sent me some videos. I'm like, it's like postcard. I mean, it's like
it's
what
beautiful.
you sit down and watch like a documentary on, and it's, he goes, the land that you're in. And that's the other thing too. It's just like, that's the thing that I really like about hunting, is just the environment that you're in. You get to go out and just appreciate like what God created, and it kind of puts things into perspective on how, I mean, we think we're important sometimes, and we are, but when you look at what the world, how big and how vast the world is, and the different types of environments that are out there, that people used to, like we talked about, like you're dropped off some of these places and it's like, okay, good luck. Like, hope you can survive. I'm going like, no wonder nobody lived past like 50.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a hard environment to try and sustain life in, but it's also like gorgeous. And I think it's a huge blessing for those that are able to go out and do some of that like DIY stuff. And I mean, the guided stuff is great. You're guaranteed something, but not everybody can drop 10 grand to go do like a moose hunt.
Yeah.
But there are some DIYs that you can do. I know I talked to some other guys like, that, caribou, like that's moved up on the list for me.
Yep.
I'm still going like, number one is like, let's go get an elk. Like I want to get an elk and a mule deer this year. So
nice.
Finally found some land that's, decent. I've learned a lot since I started this podcast. It's only been 3 months. But man, I'm going like, I'm thinking back on the other times that I've been out hunting. I'm like, I did this wrong and I did this wrong and I should have looked for that, and talking about it. And then I'm looking forward to be able to go out and put it into application. Right. Cause like I was out there, but I had no idea what I was doing. It was my son and I were just trying to figure it out. We watched the YouTube videos, but you could watch a YouTube video on brain surgery. Doesn't mean you can become a brain surgeon. Like you have to practice it and understand like all the fine little intricacies. And, and with archery specifically, there's a lot that goes into the preparation in being able to go out and have a successful harvest. And the big thing for me too, when I started this, is like, I want to give myself the best opportunity to have a clean kill, right?
Yeah. 100%.
To where it's like, I put my shot on target. I'm not taking a shot just because like, well, there's an animal in front of me, but I don't have a good shot to hit the vitals. Like I want to get myself in position. If I don't have it, I don't have it. And I walk away. And that's how I view it. I think that's how most people that are in the hunting industry that have a passion for it, like that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can practice. I've gotten really good. Like I feel really good with my archery skills. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I feel very comfortable out to like 70 yards.
Yeah.
Like taking a shot at a big animal and it's going to be put on target. But having a stationary target versus an animal that's going to hear something whiz and they lunge or jump or turn, and just getting at the right place, it's hard. But like I said, my big thing is I want to be able to give it a short, sweet death, ideally. But it doesn't always happen that way. And I know the more I hunt, the more I get into it, the more I'm not going to have that happen. But for me, I just want to try and be like mentally, physically prepared to be able to, harvest an animal in a clean way, as clean as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, there's the age old discussion of, archery versus rifle hunts and what kills them faster and this and that. And truly, if you put a good shot with a bow, it's likely going to die quicker than it will with than it will with a rifle. I've seen, tons of animals get shot with both. And if you put a good shot, like with a bow, through the vitals, double lung or heart or whatever, it's going to die just as quick or quicker as it would with a rifle. Obviously your there's more room for error probably because, you're not causing this huge impact like you do with a rifle, but that thing's going to bleed real bad if you put it in the right spot. I mean, the first elk I ever shot with a bow, um, double lunged him, and I thought I missed because I saw the arrow exit, and I thought it went right over his back because he was standing in the sun and I was in the shade, and it was a longer shot, and I thought I shot right over him, and I double lunged him, and he tipped over in 5 seconds and was done. Like as I saw him, he spun, and I was like, ah, dang it, I missed. And before I could even think about what my next step was, he tipped over and was done. So
like,
that was pretty exciting.
I got him.
It was a good relief,
I didn't miss.
Yeah, after years of grinding it out, like archery hunting and being close and having opportunities and messing them up and things like that, and finally having that happen is nice to see. So, and then you kind of know you build trust in yourself and your ability, and then things can always go wrong, but you can only prepare. You just got to be prepared, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's a different environment when an elk or a deer or whatever it is, doesn't matter if it's a cow or bull or trophy or not. Like if your heart rate's not pumping, why are we doing it? Like you want to be, you're going to be excited. You're going to be doing the whole thing. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So with that, I think there's other things that people can do to have success. And we talked a little bit about it between the difference between like private and public land. Public land, you get pressure from other hunters, and it can be kind of, it can be daunting, frustrating. I mean, I remember the first year we went, it's like we went and camped up and we were ready to go, and 5 a.m. comes, and all of a sudden I start seeing headlights coming around like the ridge, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Like everyone starts like filing in. It's like one car after another. And I'm like, we woke up the crew. I'm like, hey, we got to go if we're going to get down into our spot.
Yeah.
And we got up and went, and we got some young whippersnappers that got like legs and lungs of steel. They just like, where are you guys going? We told them like, we were going to go there, but we'll go over this way. And it was the last day of the archery hunt too. So it's kind of like pressure's on, but
yeah,
we didn't get anything, and I didn't see anybody else pack anything else out either. So, but with that, I think, the ability to get access to private land, I think sometimes seems overwhelming to people.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's going to cost me too much. We've got access to some private land that we were fortunate to get out here. But it was just a matter of like this, there's a little community up on the hill, and went and knocked on the door, and my partner was like, hey, where's your land? Like, where does it go?
Yeah.
And they told us, and they've been up there, and they've been able to go harvest a couple mule deer up there.
Nice.
And it was as simple as just, they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like they gave him a letter that said he can go. Like we've gone up and helped and watched and scouted and stuff, but it's not always free.
Yeah.
But with what you guys, why don't you share a little bit with what you guys are doing with Infinite Outdoors, and how you're opening up access to more of just like the everyday hunter who doesn't have an unlimited war chest for their hunting desires?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, so what we try to do at our whole mission with Infinite Outdoors is to provide more access. And what that has taken shape into is, providing access mostly to private land. So we contact landowners that maybe they have 40 acres on the river for duck hunting, or they have 5,000 acres for elk hunting up in the mountains, kind of thing. It can be anywhere in between. And what we do is we work with them to make sure it's quality land, to make sure there's good opportunities on that land, to set harvest quotas, to, my background in biology, and then we have some other contract biologists. We go in and we'll look at the property and say, okay, we think you could, harvest X amount of mule deer, X amount of whitetail or elk, whatever it is on that property. And then we'll list it on our app. We have a free app that's you can download and sign up. And then you can go in and people can create a membership, which is $40 for the year. And then they go on and then they can book, whatever the property that they want. If you want to go, to Colorado and book a 5-day elk hunt, you can essentially you're paying a trespass fee right to that landowner, for a quality piece of property that you get exclusively to yourself for that time period. So,
and you guys do really vet that property out, like you said, like you've got a background in biology. You kind of skimmed over it, but from what I understand, like you guys really go in and do like a pretty like very thorough analysis of what opportunities are out there and what time of game people could potentially harvest. Is that correct?
Yep. So we'll look at, based on, we have a bunch of different factors that we look at, whether it's, cover quality, habitat diversity, water resources, food resources, trophy potential, like where's this geographically, compared to a certain city or things like that. Different things that factor into, what the quality of that property is and what the opportunity for someone to be successful as. We call it our like a hunt quality score, more or less, and that just provides the landowner but also the hunters with an idea of like, okay, this is what is the quality of this property. We have like a minimum that a property has to hit in order to be on the platform, but that also goes into like, is this an easy tag to draw, is it not, things like that are all factored into it, but it allows us to paint a good picture for people, because they're relying on us, to have, they're paying, granted it's a lot less than you would pay for an outfitter. You're just paying the trespass fee. It's all DIY stuff, but you're still relying on us and on the landowner to provide a good idea of what's there, because they're paying for an opportunity, like you're paying for that time to have this property exclusively to yourself. And we want to make sure that people know that they're getting something that's worth their time and worth their money.
What are some of the areas that you guys offer for people? I mean, I know a lot of our audience is more like, like in the West, big game type stuff.
Yep.
Can you share a little bit as far as like what locations you guys currently have? Like what are some of the top game options?
Yeah.
And kind of, just share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started the company in Colorado back in 2020, and then now we're currently located in Wyoming. But so with that in mind, we've kind of grown from those two states. So we have a ton of stuff in Colorado, a ton of stuff in Wyoming for big game, for waterfowl, for upland, everything like that, turkeys. And then we've grown kind of out from there. So we're in currently 16 states, I believe. But in terms of like what our currently core areas are like, would be that Colorado, Wyoming. We've gotten in trying to get into Utah a little more, Idaho, things like that. And then, if people want to like go east into Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, things like that as well. So, if you want to go, you got a bunch of points in Wyoming for antelope and you're like, oh, I've always wanted to cash these in. We have, 40 different options that you could go through and find a property and to fill your tag and put in for a tag and reserve a property for pretty affordable. I think most antelope hunts are like $1,000 for 3 to 5 days of access, and typically you're getting like 5 to 8,000 acres, to yourself or to the people. So when you book it, you can invite other people. So if you say, if you book it, Ryan, and then like your son wants to go, he has a tag, you can invite him, and he'll be on that reservation. So he'll be allowed to join, but no one else has access to that while you have that reservation. So
how many people could you invite with you?
Each property is different. So we have like a set guest limit basically for each property. Most of them are for like big game or 3 to 4. Because other than that, like we want everyone to be successful. If you have a 10-person guest limit, and you invite all these buddies, most likely some of them are not gonna, that's a lot of people to fill antelope tags or whatever it is, kind of thing. So we base it based off of, what's that population density in that area. And then, how many hunts do we have on that harvest quota for that property?
Okay. So it's the number of hunts, but if you had a couple buddies you wanted to bring along just to like be part of it, like you could do that. but
Yeah.
not
But in
necessarily
terms of like,
everyone's harvesting.
yeah, if you had like, say, you know, like a lot of times for elk hunts, like somebody will book it. There's only one tag, but they're like, hey, I need my buddy's going to come along to help out. We would just have them sign up. They'd invite them, but they wouldn't get charged that fee for the hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, because you know most people don't elk hunt on their own. It's a lot. It's hard to pack out a whole elk by yourself. Usually, you got a buddy with. So you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So you have to buy the tags. Are there option? I mean, do you have much for like over the counter tags, like with
yep,
access? So it's not
yep.
necessarily like you have to cash in a bunch of points on everything. It just kind of depends on the location that you're looking and what you guys have as far as availability. Like, what's your anyway? I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends. You know, we try to get properties in all the different units. We have some that it takes 12 points to draw a tag and some that it's over the counter. You know, like it really depends on where you want to go, what you want to do, and what availability we have. And even in some like Colorado, for example, we have some properties where the landowner has vouchers available. So that landowner can sell you a voucher to get a tag, so you don't have to have any points at all or burn any points, which is different than most other Western states. So obviously that's not an option in Wyoming, but in Colorado they do have transferable tags. So the landowner may sell you access for X amount, and then he can sell you a tag on top of that. But those are
So just like
fewer.
the landowner tags.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We don't sell those, but the landowner can. Some of the options the landowner can sell them. So,
And is that listed on the website? Like if that is an option?
yep, it's all on there. Yeah,
Okay. And
and those
we'll make
obviously are
sure. Go
hot
ahead.
items. Those are hot items, so they typically sell out relatively quick. And the landowner tags are, nothing's guaranteed. The landowner still has to put in for. There's a preference point system, just like there is for every other tag. So they're not guaranteed anything. But you can get on like the list. I guess you can reserve it, and we always tell people like. Put in for your own tag, and then if you don't draw it and the landowner has a tag, then we can put you in contact with them, kind of thing.
Okay. That's
So,
cool. Well, we'll make sure and put links in the show notes. But the website, if you're interested, you want to go check it out, it's infiniteoutdoorsusa.com.
yep.
And then the app, if someone wants to go download the app, where would they go to do that?
Just the Apple Store or the Google Play Store is available on both, like Apple and
Search
Android.
Infinite Outdoors.
Yep, just Infinite Outdoors. And we made a code for you. It's just Hunt Stealth, all lowercase, all one word. If your users want to put that in when they sign up for a membership, like we said, there's just a free. You can check out everything online or on the app, see all the features, and then you can go on. In order to book anything, you have to create a membership or pay for an annual or monthly membership, and use that code Hunt Stealth. It'll get you 20% off of that annual membership. And on there too, we work with a bunch of brands across the industry, so you can get discounts on camo, optics, calls, a bunch of different stuff. I think there's all kinds of different stuff. So if you sign up for an Infinite Outdoors membership, and then you get a code for 20% off Element Outdoors clothing, and you buy a jacket, you're already going to pay for your membership. That's kind of a perk to being an annual member. So yeah, we'll throw that. I'll send you that code and everything, so you can throw it in there too. But happy to do that for everybody. And yeah,
I
we
appreciate
try to
that.
be we try to be a resource for everyone too. So there's an easy, like, if you have any questions about how it works, there's a support request button right on the app. You can send that in, and we're always around to talk to people and get them some access, more or less.
That's exciting. That's good stuff, man. As we kind of wrap up here, I'm just wondering, like, is there any other like tip that you would leave to somebody that's new to hunting, or like me that hasn't had success harvesting a big game, that it's like, hey, focus on this one thing and it'll make it either more enjoyable or just maybe lead you to success?
I kind of touched on it earlier, but it's kind of twofold. Like, being patient is one. I can't tell you how many times I've like not been patient enough, whether you're deer hunting or turkey hunting or elk hunting, whatever it is, and you move spots and then the animals walk right past where you just were, kind of thing. So patience is one. And the other one is just being observant. Like, you can't be too observant about everything that's going on. And it makes it more enjoyable because you see things you wouldn't otherwise see, like you're sitting there listening and you see, an eagle fly by, or you see a black bear walk by while you're out hunting, things like that. And just being overly observant, like trying to write, even if I've done it where I'll write things down while I'm hunting, like have a notebook with me and I'm sitting there and like, oh, like these elk moved here on this day. This was the temperature. This was, what the wind was doing. This is, what worked, what didn't work, kind of thing. And just trying to like observe and learn from your experience, but also from what nature's doing around you. 'Cause it'll tell you all the signs.
Telling you.
Yeah. It'll tell
taking
you.
notes like that sounds like what a fly fisherman would do.
Yeah. I never did it fly fishing, but I should have probably. Yeah.
I know a couple guys that, man, like they pull out the notes and they're like, this was the water temperature. This was the weather. This was the temperature outside. This was the direction of the wind. And these were the insects that I saw. And I mean, they're guides themselves, and you go out with them and you can't help but have success.
Yeah.
So I guess, that's a great point. Like, take some notes, observe the environment.
Yeah. And I think it just helps you. It like will accelerate that learning curve a lot too, because you can like, it's something, when you're truly like, and then when you're the doldrums of summer, when you're just dreaming about elk hunting or dreaming about being in the woods, you have something to look back on. And like, you're listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos, but like those are those people's individual experiences where you have your own individual experiences that you can look back on and relive it and be like, oh yeah, if I would have done like, this is what happened, but I remember that. But if I would have done this differently, maybe I could have gotten in front of them and cut them off, or, I did this calling sequence and it didn't work and it did this time, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. That's what I've been doing for the past 3 months now, is just taking notes. I'm like, oh, that's what I did wrong. I should have done this. I should have waited here longer. So I think it's great advice. I mean, a lot of the times I think when anybody that's hunting, whether you're new or not, like you go out with an intent to harvest an animal and you want to get it done. And it's like, I need to move here, do this. Just sit down, be patient, listen to what the environment is telling you and kind of trust your gut too.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many different things that are happening and you never know. Sometimes your gut may say move and you're like, I'm going to stay put.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, I know guys that there's luck involved in everything too. I know guys that will shoot some every year. They could be, they haven't, whatever, they're smoking cigarettes on the side of the hill and they still elk walk by, kind of thing, where meanwhile we're like scent control, do the whole thing, play the wind right, and the elk wind you no matter what. So there's some luck involved, but like the other thing is just like enjoy it. It's an amazing thing to be a part of. And like whatever you're chasing, it could be for mule deer doe and you're still having a great time. You're with people that you enjoy, you're creating memories, and that's really the most important thing. So.
Couldn't agree more. Well put, Michael. Yeah. Hey, thank you for coming on the show. You guys make sure go give them a follow. Infinite Outdoors, USA.com is their website. If you search Infinite Outdoors, you can find it on IG. Again, we'll put links in the show notes. Michael, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Okay, guys, pleasure. Stay safe and God bless. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hunt Stealth Podcast. Hey, I have a favor to ask. If you would and you enjoy this podcast, head on over to wherever you consume it and leave us a review. It's going to help us get this pumped out to more people that might be interested in hearing podcasts like this.